Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports. Before we start, can you do me a favor and like this video, subscribe, hit the bell to get all your notifications, and Spectator Sports is now have an Instagram account as well. So I'm going to drop that link in the description below. Give that a follow and we're going to have some content for you there and a lot more moving forward. The NBA offseason now is fully underway and it's providing just as much drama as the NBA playoffs is, kind of making this month of June and July a little bit spicy to say the least. And there's been so many trades going down, a lot of free agent signings as well. And also going to address the KD and Kyrie Irving trade rumors. So to start, there's been a bunch of trades going on in the NBA. One of the big ones to start off was the Blazers getting Jeremy Grant. They traded a few picks over to Detroit and kind of taking on his salary. I think it's going to be a plus, obviously. I mean, the real head scratcher was them trading CJ McCollum earlier in the year. Obviously, with them kind of treading water, they wanted to probably tank and get the best draft pick possible, and they got some good compensation for CJ, of course. But now using some of those assets from the Pelicans to acquire Jeremy Grant sounds like more of a lateral move in my opinion. The amount of capital that they gave up is a little bit concerning, but we'll see now with Damian Lillard coming back after a nasty abdominal injury how he and the Blazers can respond and return to the postseason in 2023. The Denver Nuggets traded for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they completed that trade by trading Will Barton to the Washington Wizards. Both are kind of similar players. I think KCP is definitely the well-known commodity out of the two. He's definitely still a very good wing defender, capable three-point shooter as well. Your classic 3-and-D type of player. And I think he's going to fit in pretty well with Denver. They definitely need some help on the wing, especially with some kind of defensive liabilities that they have. When Jamal Murray comes back, he's not known as the best defender. So getting KCP is going to help out with that. Going to get some more spacing as well, because in this year, you know, they definitely got stuck with Aaron Gordon out on the perimeter and he just got pick and rolled to death. Obviously, him being out on the perimeter is not his forte, let alone defending maybe the inside block. They are adding pieces to prolong the prime of Nikola Jokic. The 76ers traded Danny Green for DeAnthony Melton out of Memphis, and I think this is a win-win for both sides. DeAnthony Melton kind of got stuck on that guard rotation with Memphis. He still has some promise, some talent, but just fell out of the rotation. I don't think that was anything of his demeanor, his play. And I think he's going to get some quality minutes with the 76ers going forward. He has a lot to prove. And Danny Green is now a nice veteran piece to a young Memphis Grizzlies. And I think his championship experience with the Toronto Raptors, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Los Angeles Lakers is going to pay big dividends for this Memphis Grizzlies team, as Ja is now going to continue to navigate and try to propel the Memphis Grizzlies deeper in the postseason. The Hawks made a couple of moves kind of concerning their backcourt. They traded away Kevin Huerter to the Sacramento Kings after just giving him a contract extension in 2021, and they also traded for Dejounte Murray from the San Antonio Spurs. And now the Spurs are kind of now embracing the full-on tank move, and that is kind of sad to see such a once blossoming franchise. You know, they had a consistent playoff streak and they had a streak of 50-odd win seasons as well. You know, nothing but success in the Popovich, Tim Duncan era, but since obviously Timmy has retired, they've dropped off a bit, but they still remain quite competitive. But I could say the end of the Spurs was really when Kawhi Leonard left the Spurs and joined up with Toronto. But to address the Hawks side of it, I think they're picking up a talented point guard with Dejounte Murray. He's shown increased growth since his rookie year. He also missed 1 year early in his career with an ACL injury, but he's coming off an all-star nod, and I think he's going to work really well with Trae Young. He's going to share the ball handling duties. A really long defender, capable defender as well. Kind of a triple-double threat as well. Led the Spurs in triple-doubles this year. And there's a lot of promise there. So we're going to see how that's really going to translate for the Hawks moving forward. I'm just really happy that they didn't end up trading John Collins. I'm a fan of John Collins and what he's brought to the Atlanta Hawks. A really capable, small or a stretch four. He can do a little bit of everything, and really talented inside, just making cuts, a good slasher at the rim, and he's great at finishing too. The Celtics made a move and they traded for Malcolm Brogdon, and I actually talked about this in my previous episode where they needed a true point guard, a true orchestrator of the offense, if you want to call that. Like I said, Marcus Smart is a very talented point guard, off-ball defender, on-ball defender, but his problem is in terms of decision-making, especially late in games, has proven to be a little suspect. And we saw that in the 2022 postseason, especially. Not to say that Malcolm Brogdon has proven himself just yet. I mean, he's been with the Milwaukee Bucks on their 2019 Eastern Conference Finals run, and then he signed a contract with the Indiana Pacers. Hasn't really done too much in Indiana, but you could say the roster around him wasn't that great. But still very competent and smart player as well, just knows how to orchestrate the offense and put players in positions of success. And I think that's going to be a good move for them moving forward. And salute to Brad Stevens for pulling off that deal. I think that's going to be a big factor in the upcoming season. The Dallas Mavericks made a trade with the Houston Rockets to acquire Christian Wood. And another talented big. They really were lacking a true big man in their postseason run. I mean, they used Dwight Powell for most of those stretches after they traded away Kristaps Porzingis to the Washington Wizards. And I think, Christian Wood brings solid play. He's going to be obviously an offensive threat. He's been consistently an 18 and 10 type of guy. It puts up stats, but they've been on bad teams, and that's always been the concern. It's a lot of players that put up gaudy stats, but it's not really winning basketball. And I think the compensation that they gave up, it's really not really that much. Houston could have gotten more, but a late first-round pick really doesn't do much for teams in the NBA these days. But a low price to pay for another need that they needed. The problem is, though, they did lose Jalen Brunson in the offseason to a mega deal with the New York Knicks. And it's definitely now another piece that they're going to miss. I mean, he was basically their second best player in this 2022 postseason run to the Western Conference Finals, and really held down the fort, especially early part of that Utah first round series. I mean, he single-handedly probably won them 2 out of 3 games to start off without Luka, and now he's going to be playing for the Knicks. One of the other big moves was Rudy Gobert being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota gave up quite a bag for Rudy Gobert. I believe it was 4 first-round draft picks and a few players, and definitely a really head-scratching move there. Honestly, I would give that grade a D if I were to give a grade on that. And it's just way too much compensation for a player that's been routinely exposed for being not the best perimeter defender. He's fantastic at guarding the rim, but that's only in certain situations in today's NBA where we're trending towards small ball. And he's a 7-footer, not the most agile, and get pick and rolled to death. And you saw that a lot with the postseason matchup back in 2021 against the Los Angeles Clippers. And he got exposed. He missed long stretches of time, and just because he's a liability, at least on the perimeter. And when he's switched out like that, he doesn't stand much of a chance. So, and the fit, too, is concerning to me. I mean, they already have Karl Anthony Towns. They have Anthony Edwards. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns has been a little bit more of a stretch 5, and now I don't know if he's the stretch 4. Guess he would be the stretch 4 now that I think about it, because Gobert is really only going to patrol the paint and sit at the dunker spot. So yeah, they're trying to bring back bigger basketball, but we'll see how that move translates coming up this season. And now also with the offseason kicking off, we had the NBA draft happening, and quite a surprise coming out with a lot of experts picking Jabari Smith out of Auburn to be the top overall pick, going to the Orlando Magic. The Magic started putting out some rumors that they would be taking Paolo Banchero out of Duke, and it turns out that they did select him number 1 overall. A lot of analysts maybe had him at number 3, going to the Houston Rockets maybe, or even lower, just because he's maybe not the best defender as maybe Jabari Smith was exhibiting in his college days. But this draft doesn't really have a unanimous number 1 pick. It's been quite a bit of time actually since a draft has really had like a kind of a true star to start off. I mean, I can think about 2019 with Zion. I mean, definitely had the clout and the allure that New Orleans needed, another star that they could bring back. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what these prospects can do. I mean, number 2, OKC Thunder selected Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga, and again, the concerns with Chet have been his weight. The length is there. I mean, the dude is 7'1", 7'2", a wingspan of 7'6", if not longer. I mean, getting into the paint would be impossible. He's just a shot blocking threat. The problem is, can he muster a bang with those bigger NBA bodies? I mean, he's coming into the draft weighing 195 pounds, and that is really concerning, to say the least, where he should be at least about 230 probably. I mean, there are guys that just bodied him in Summer League. He started off pretty strong, I'd say. He set a Summer League record with 6 blocks, but the day after that, he was bullied by this guy named Kenny Lofton when in their Summer League matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies. And it's pretty cool, actually. Kenny is this 6'6", kind of positionless player, if you were going to give a distinction. I mean, he has the height of a shooting guard, but the weight of a center, weighing at about 280 pounds. He's probably going to have to slim down a little bit if he wants to make an NBA roster, but the dude has skills. I've never seen a guy move in that way. I mean, he bullied Chet. I mean, obviously with the weight advantage. I mean, when you're giving up 70, 80 pounds, if not more, you're going to bully somebody in the paint and get wherever you want. But he had a handle too. I mean, he had a broken possession, and Chet was guarding him on the perimeter. And you'd think, with the weight disadvantage, at least in the block, there's an advantage of that, given that he would probably be more agile on the perimeter. But on this broken possession, I saw Lofton chuck up a 3, and it was nothing but butter. I mean, if he has a reliable jump shot, I mean, I don't know if he's going to make the Memphis Grizzlies roster, but, there could be somebody that would pick him up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he made their G League team, or even cracked the 15-man roster, similarly how GP2 did in with Golden State last year. In a head-to-head matchup between Paolo Banchero and Jabari Smith, it was advantage Paolo in this one. He stuffed the stat sheet and really dominated Jabari one-on-one, holding him to not the best shooting numbers, and I gotta say that he's been looking really good in this summer league to start off. After that performance, however, the Magic decided to shut him down for the rest of the summer league play. And I agree. I mean, you want to get the feet wet, you want to see what they can do, but this is now your best asset moving forward. I mean, Orlando has struggled mightily since the post Dwight Howard era. I mean, they've made a couple postseasons. That's the 7th seed, but not a long stay in the postseason by any means. So We're going to see how this new rebuilding magic is going to do moving forward. And now to address the KD and Kyrie rumors, I'm going to start with Kyrie Irving. There was this up and down battle where originally he was putting out rumors that he'd stay, and then he's having one hand on the door, he's looking at other options, and then there was some gaining traction that towards the opt-in deadline that he was going to opt out and then take the mid-level exception and play for the Lakers at about $6.5 million. But after that was quickly extinguished, though, out of nowhere, Woj dropped the bomb where he opted in for his $37 million contract. And I mean, I wouldn't give up $31 million at any point in time. So financially, don't blame Kyrie at all. Now, the Nets issue has never been Kyrie's play. It's been Kyrie's availability, whether it be to injuries or whether he feels like it or his vaccination status. Kyrie has been an interesting player to cover since his tenure with the Cavs and demanding a trade to Boston. But if he does decide to make a trade, it's really now a team that really wants to take him on and what they can do with him, to be honest. I think the Lakers are kind of the only team really desperate to make a trade, and now the question is, how are they going to engineer this trade? Their picks are tied up between the New Orleans Pelicans and now the Washington Wizards with the Russell Westbrook trade in 2021. So they're really stuck. I mean, you could be stuck with Russell Westbrook for another year. We saw what that could do. Darvin Ham spoke very highly of Russ, but the question remains to see if Russ can make those adjustments. And I'm not sure if the Lakers are really going to gamble on that for an entire season. Now, it really just comes to picking your poison. Do you want a player that maybe isn't available but really good when he plays? Or do you want the player that's probably all available? Or do you want the player that's readily available? I mean, Russell Westbrook has been a very durable player. He played 79 games last year. The problem was his play. So it's, again, pick your poison. What do you want here? And that's really my concerns. I am an avid Laker fan, and I think, though, I would lean towards taking Kyrie, but the problem is what the Nets really want back in terms of compensation. And now with the other major rumor is Kevin Durant, and he demanded a trade about 3 weeks ago. At the top of his list were the Miami Heat and the Phoenix Suns. A lot of people, at least on NBA Twitter, have again come at Kevin Durant saying that, you're just cherry picking the two number one seeds in each conference, and kind of similar to what he did back in 2016 when he selected the Golden State Warriors to play for. And we can get into whether or not he's a leader or not at another time. I already dissected that. But it's definitely interesting. I mean, the problem is when you demand a trade like this, you're going to give up assets. And just to acquire a player like Durant, I mean, it's going to take a lot of assets. I mean, we're hearing these softball options with Mikal Bridges, 4 first-rounders, throw in DeAndre Ayton and maybe another player to the Brooklyn Nets. And what is Brooklyn going to do with that? I mean, they want picks and they want young players. I mean, that's, I feel, adequate compensation for a guy like Kevin Durant. And again, with Miami, Kevin Durant doesn't want to play with just nobody, right? The problem is to get a player like him, you have to give up a lot. And he said if he wants to get traded to Miami, Lowry has to stay, Jimmy Butler has to stay, and Bam. So that leaves maybe Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and then the rest of the roster and a bunch of picks over from Miami to Brooklyn. And these again are late round, first round picks. I mean, that's not really the best assets that you can, or compensation you can get for Kevin Durant. And then the problem is if you trade into a team that can give you the picks and maybe a young player, is Kevin Durant going to want to play there? Toronto has come up as a kind of a dark horse. I mean, people are saying watch out for the Raptors, watch out for Masai Ujiri pulling out another rabbit out of his hat like he did with the Kawhi Leonard trade. I would personally love to see that. My biggest thing is, like, what are the Raptors going to give up? They can give up a lot and still remain quite sustainable, actually. I think the biggest thing that they don't want to give up is Scotty Barnes. I mean, he's the defending Rookie of the Year. He has a lot of untapped potential. He's been getting a lot of praise from a bunch of players across the league. And I think, that is a player that you absolutely have to keep just because you just don't know what's there. And then, you got to keep Fred VanVleet. He is their guard. I would trade OG Anunoby. I would trade picks. I would even probably trade even Pascal, possibly. But it's going to be interesting to see if Brooklyn even wants to take Pascal's contract because he is a max player. But Toronto does still have a lot to give. They can give up Precious Achiuwa. They can throw in Chris Boucher. A lot of interesting options there that Toronto can throw in, and I think the fit would be totally seamless. I mean, Durant can go iso ball, or he can go, the optimal team distribution ball where, he's just going to be floating around on the wings, shooting pull-up J's for threes, and I think that would be totally ideal. The question is, does he want to play in Canada for half the season, if not more? So that is the overall question. We'll see what happens with this news. But regardless, I mean, they both could end up staying in Brooklyn too by the time the season starts. I mean, Brooklyn is not obligated to trade any one of these players. They are under contract for the remainder of the 2022-2023 season. And Durant is going to be stuck with Brooklyn at least for another 4 years. So Brooklyn is by no means obligated to trade him. They can do their homework, but they need to do what's best for their team. So they will only strike that deal when they feel like they get that kind of compensation. So we'll see what happens. Now, transitioning to sort of NBA news, but it's more like beef, I guess, where there's this new talking point of the old media being debate shows like First Take, Undisputed, PTI, and now news shows where podcasters are coming out and giving their own takes. And the new media is kind of more detailed on the player side with this whole player empowerment movement. Guys like Draymond, JJ Redick, CJ McCollum, to name a few, have really successful podcasts and YouTube shows, and a lot of people tune into those, and it's been getting a lot of praise. But then they also translate to the other side as analysts as well, and that's the real thing where they're starting to clash. I mean, we saw JJ clash with Mad Dog on First Take a few months ago on the era of which players played in, where guys of the Celtics dynasty days that were like plumbers and non-athletic guys, where today the players are in the top shape, best shape possible, and other things there too. And then like Draymond going at a few personalities on sports media networks where they calling them names and giving out takes. I think the biggest thing is some people make takes based on just clicks. What is the hottest take? I don't care what it is. I don't care how wrong it is. I'm going to make a take. And if the more preposterous it is, the more people are going to just click into it just out of curiosity. That's just how media is today. I mean, we're all about headlines. We're all about the quick stuff. We're not into getting the details because we're too impatient to read or listen. And I think there's going to be something like a bridge where I think both sides can really meet in the middle. I think my personal critiques of like a guy like Draymond is just really his play. I know what he is off the court. I mean, he's a great dude, great father, but his play on the court can be a little bit reckless. You know, he did cost his team a championship and very nearly costed his team a championship this year as well. So that's my thing. I would always keep things on the court, not really off the court. But yeah, I mean, you know, these takes on, you know, people's legacies and just things that really don't make a lot of sense. We can grade things based on, you know, as a most unbiased lens as possible. We need to look at the analytics side and then dissect that. And that is what Draymond said itself. And I respect him. I like that take. I like that ideology and bringing that, because you know, that's really what we want to share with the viewers, is just dissections and everything, not headlines, not anything crazy, you know. And now to get into some NFL news. I mean, wow, it's been a bit since I think the NFL draft, since I talked about the NFL, but I wanted to talk about each division in the NFL. We're kind of hitting a dead spot right now in July. We're between mini camps and training camp, and by this time in August, we're going to get preseason ball. But in the meantime, to keep my NFL fans entertained, I wanted to give a division-by-division breakdown just based on how they stand at this point in time in early mid-July, how their roster stands with their division rivals, and see how each division stacks up. So to start, I wanted to talk about the NFC East, and I think the least talented roster, the team that's going to finish last in this division, is definitely going to be the New York Giants. They just don't have stability at quarterback. We just haven't seen enough out of Daniel Jones to really propel himself as the undisputed starter. They haven't even picked up his fifth-year option, so definitely treading water there. I feel like the Commanders are the next team in terms of finishing, where now they've acquired Carson Wentz and they've re-upped Terry McLaurin. They have some really talented pieces on defense. I mean, Chase Young will be coming off an ACL injury, but I believe, you know, when healthy, he's a very, very talented pass rusher and dangerous too. But overall, I mean, they have pieces, but I think that the terms of the talent that they have on their roster is just not enough to propel them ahead of the other teams. And number two, I'm going to put the Dallas Cowboys, and I feel that they didn't really make a lot of moves to propel themselves or maintain their status as the undisputed NFC East favorite. They got worse this offseason. They lost pieces. They didn't really do a lot to replace the pieces that they lost. And they just didn't cap held, too. I mean, they have a lot of expensive players that haven't been performing to their standards, to their cap number. And, I mean, the biggest thing is that, you know, it's really going to see what they can do in the postseason. They play a soft schedule, they play soft opponents, but then when it comes to, you know, the big leagues in the postseason, they just fall flat. To project the NFC East winner, I'm picking the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's really because all the offseason acquisitions that they made, the moves that they made. Starting off in free agency, they picked up Hassan Reddick, a really talented pass rusher. They made a lot of moves in the draft where they acquired another first-round pick for 2023, but then they also got A.J. Brown, a top 10 receiver. They also picked up Jordan Davis, and that's going to be a really great plug for that defensive line, part of their big culture there. They added depth to the offensive line. Now they have a backup guard center to kind of take off the reins from Jason Kelce if and whenever he decides to retire. And they got better on both sides of the ball. I mean, they picked up James Bradbury and a former Pro Bowler back in 2020. I think scheme-wise, he's going to fit in really well. They addressed the linebacker situation, picking up Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. And on all three levels, the secondary, the linebackers, and the defensive line, I think the defense has really improved, and that was kind of their Achilles heel to start off. But the real question is, can Jalen Hurts really make the leap? Now he's been equipped with more talent. I mean, A.J. Brown and him are seen to be good friends off the field. And now him, and then factoring Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert. I mean, there's a bevy of weapons on this offense. And as long as they can stay healthy and maintain that cohesion, I think they're going to be really dangerous. A lot of people are still picking Dallas is just because they have the best quarterback in this division. And the quarterback position is really important, but it's also the supporting cast as well. And the quarterback himself, Dak Prescott, I mean, a lot of people think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's a top 15 quarterback. That means he's better than half the other quarterbacks in the league. But I don't think he is. I think, he's better than Jalen Hurts at this point in time. But that gap that people are thinking that is a very wide gap, I think that's a lot closer than people think. I mean, the aspect is that Dak has, from the very beginning, I call him a trust fund baby of the NFL, where he inherited the best offensive line in his rookie year, the best running back in the 2016 draft, and turned out to be the rushing leader as well in 2016. He had weapons on the outside. He had a pretty good defense too. Didn't get the job done in his opening postseason run, and fell flat on his face in 2017 after losing Zeke Elliott for half the season. And only one postseason win to show off for it, and that was against the Seattle Seahawks, who didn't have a kicker for the whole second half, and the point of margin was only 2 points. So you can see what that happens is when you are not having your kicker. For the NFC South, I wanted to easily put the Bucs as the top of the division. I mean, they are head and shoulders above any other competition in this division. You could say the Saints improved with their offseason acquisitions of getting Chris Olave and just picking up Honey Badger as well. I think those are big additions, but they just have question marks at quarterback. I mean, Jameis Winston seems to be the starter going forward. And he played well in 7 games, but he's going to have to stay healthy for the entire season and prove that he can take care of the ball. The Falcons and the Panthers can go kind of either way. I picked the Panthers to finish third in the division just because they have CMC. And I think their quarterback room may be slightly better than the Falcons' quarterback room at this moment in time. They have weapons on the outside. So it's really just a toss-up. They're both not really talented at all. I mean, there's Desmond Ridder, the rookie out of Cincinnati, coming to Atlanta. And then they have Kyle Pitts. But, I mean, there's not really much there. I mean, Marcus Mariota is going to be a solid bridge quarterback to see how he can bridge that the Matt Ryan era to maybe the Desmond Ridder era, but that remains to be seen. The NFC West now is going to be really competitive. I think all 3 teams are going to be up there for the division title, with the exception of the Seattle Seahawks. But I think they give a slight edge still to the Los Angeles Rams. They are defending champs. They've won the division now. Coming into this season, they have the best roster from top to bottom, and I just think those are big proponents of them coming back and winning this division again. In second place, out of the 2 teams, I would give it to the Arizona Cardinals, and I feel like this because the 49ers now will take a step back with them transitioning from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance. Trey has proven in small aspects to be quite the talented runner and the dual threat quarterback, but he's very raw, so he's going to have to prove what he can do. I mean, there is a bevy of talent on the outside. I mean, George Kittle is still there. Debo Samuel's still there, Brandon Ayuk. So he has the weapons, but I'm going to have to see what he can really do to really show that he's better than what the Cardinals have at their disposal right now, at least with Kyler Murray. And at the NFC North, I feel like that gap between the Packers and the Vikings is a lot closer now. I'm not going to go to that jump and say that the Vikings will dethrone the Packers as the division champions this year, but that gap is, again, like I said, closer. The Packers losing Devontae Adams is going to be a big blow. I mean, they can show or say that, you know, the receiver room that they have, they're confident in, they feel like they're going to be good, but they're not well-known commodities at all, and I think, you know, they're going to have to really prove it this year and that's going to really come from Aaron Rodgers too, to see what he can do with these surrounding casts. Now moving on to the AFC. The AFC North, the defending AFC champion Bengals, I feel like will repeat as the AFC North champions as well. I know that Baltimore missed a lot of players, but there seems to be a lot of moving parts there too. The thing is that they're going to have to reintegrate a lot of injured players back into this lineup. The Bengals have cohesiveness, and I just think that Joe Burrow is only going to improve even further. That chemistry with him and Jamar Chase is only going to improve further as well. So I'm going to say that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be just slightly edged favorites to win that division over the Baltimore Ravens. And then the Browns maybe are going to finish third ahead of the Steelers. I really don't know. It really depends on what happens with their quarterback. If he is ending up going to be suspended for the rest of the year, then I think they'd be the bottom of the league or bottom of the division. But we'll see what happens with the Steelers side of things. In the AFC East, I think that the Buffalo Bills are definitely overwhelming favorites in this division. There's talent with the Miami Dolphins, with Tyreek Hill joining that team. But again, it comes down to the quarterbacks. Josh Allen is definitely going to be an MVP in this league one day, and it could arguably be this season. But I don't know exactly what Miami can really do to close that gap. But Tua needs to really prove his worth this year. They've given him the adequate help, and now he has to translate that into success. And especially with the expanded postseason, him getting them to a 7th seed is very doable with this roster. To round out the other part of the AFC East, I would say the Patriots would maybe finish third. They wouldn't fall back completely than they did from earlier, but they're just definitely not as talented as what they used to be. Mac is obviously still a really good quarterback, but you know, he has his limitations, and I think he's going to have to improve on that to really make them a threat in the AFC. And the Jets, well, they're the Jets. I mean, they've made improvements too, but you know, there's a long rebuilding process, so they're probably going to finish last. In the AFC South, I'm going to pick the Indianapolis Colts to move ahead of the Tennessee Titans. I think the addition of Matty Ice is going to help and kind of settle down this quarterback room. Yes, he's older. I think he's lost some zip on the ball, but he has a good offensive line, and that's going to give him time. He has a quick release. He makes reads pretty quickly too. He doesn't hold on to the ball. So I think Matt Ryan will be successful behind that really talented offensive line. And then again, he does have Jonathan Taylor to hand the ball off as well. He was arguably MVP of last year. So the Colts have talent on both sides of the ball, and I think given also that the Titans have lost A.J. Brown, I think that's going to be a kind of a big loss. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I would say that he would definitely struggle. I would say that the Titans would definitely take a step back compared to the Colts. And then third place, I would say that the Jaguars would take a slight step forward ahead of the Houston Texans. The Texans are kind of just in it for the long run as well, a big rebuild. They have assets as well, and if the Browns end up, not having their quarterback for the entire season, that pick is going to go to the Houston Texans. That's a huge asset to have. So the draft capital that the Texans have is going to be really good. And now the trickiest division to really pick. I mean, the AFC West is historically great. I mean, each of the 4 quarterbacks have Pro Bowl nods. They are talent from up and down the roster. So it's really, really hard to say who's going to be the best in this division. I do think that the Chargers have made the steps necessary to overtake the Chiefs, just because the Chiefs have taken a step back without Tyreek Hill moving forward, and the Chargers have added things, especially on defense. I mean, adding J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack is huge. I mean, for a defense who has talent at individual spots, but they didn't seem to really get it all at once. And I think another year with Brandon Staley kind of installing that defensive ideologies and mantra into that locker room is going to really help as well. But yeah, I mean, it's really a toss-up between them and the Chiefs. I would say then also it's a toss-up to see who finishes 3rd and 4th, because we very well could get 4 teams qualifying for the postseason given the recent expansion to 7 teams per conference. But I think 3 teams could come out of this division, maybe 2 though, because the top 2 are all of these teams kind of beat up on each other. So even the division winner, they may win the division, but that record may not be good just because they have to really take some licks from their division rivals. So that's my ideas for at least a division by division breakdown in the NFL. A big trade happened where Baker Mayfield has now finally been traded to the Carolina Panthers. I believe that it's going to be really interesting to see him go head-to-head with his fellow 2008 drafted quarterback in Sam Darnold. Both quarterbacks were up there for the top overall selection, but the Browns decided to go with Baker Mayfield, and then the Jets had Sam Darnold to start off. And I think these are going to be really interesting to see. Now, I think the advantage for the starter spot goes to Sam Darnold just because he has a year learning this playbook. He has the chemistry, and he is the known locker room commodity compared to Baker, who's the new guy on the block, can be prickly, a kind of a locker room, headache as well. Talent, obviously, I think it would be Baker, but he's going to have to really earn his spot. So the preseason and training camp is going to really determine who's going to be the starter of the Carolina Panthers moving forward. And the biggest thing is, despite that, they're going to need a healthy Christian McCaffrey. He's missed a lot of time the last 2 seasons, and he's going to have to really do a lot to regain that 2019 form where he went off for 1,000 yards receiving and 1,000 yards rushing. And now to cover a little bit of tennis. Wimbledon just finished last weekend, and we got to see Rafa Nadal play a classic 5-set match in the quarterfinals against Fritz of the United States. And while Nadal managed to win this match, he unfortunately suffered or re-aggravated a really bad abdominal injury, and that forced him to withdraw from the rest of the Wimbledon championships. And with that, his opponent Nick Kyrgios was able to bypass the semifinals and book a spot in the final, meeting Novak Djokovic, and it was a really interesting final. I mean, Nick started off really strong, even taking the opening set. His aces, his serving game was phenomenal, to say the least. I mean, he doubled Novak's ace count by the end of the match, and really depended and leaned on that to start off this match. But in the second set, he started to get frustrated, and we've known this with Nick Kyrgios. He's been a little bit of a loose cannon, a hothead, either with hecklers, the umpires, the line judges, whatever the case may be. So he lost composure, and that did translate, unfortunately, for him, and that did spell his doom. And Novak was able to take the remaining 3 sets and win it 3-1, crowning him as now the 21 overall titles in the men's championships, and now only one back of Rafael Nadal. And I wanted to get into a little bit of the GOAT conversation for tennis players. Growing up a Roger Federer fan, I think he was definitely the best that I ever saw to start off with tennis. And then I think it was really after that a toss-up between Rafa and Djokovic. But since 2011, you could say that Djokovic has really picked it up and become the best player overall. He's won title after title, and it's really been on across all surfaces, whether it's hard court, clay, grass, whatever the case may be. He's won multiple titles. And while, yes, Rafa has won multiple titles still on other surfaces, he hasn't won a Wimbledon since 2010. And up until this winter, he actually only won one Australian Open, and so he's just so dominant on clay, and that's not a slight on him. Clay is a very difficult surface to play tennis on, and he is the master of it. But at least for me, for my cup of tea, for the GOAT of a sport, I like to see somebody go through diversity especially in tennis where there are different surfaces involved. And I would say that Djokovic is still definitely would be the greatest of all time, even though despite him having one fewer major at his disposal. And that count could definitely be in flux too, because it seems like he's going to be missing the US Open due to the vaccination status. But if he's able to return, or those mandates are going to change moving forward in maybe a post-pandemic world, he could definitely catch up to Nadal. Nadal's issue is that his strength comes with some weakness with wear and tear. He just plays so hard that his knees give out sometimes, and now with this abdominal injury, it really is starting to affect his serve. And that's a huge part of Nadal's game. And again, just to summarize, I feel like overall versatility, especially on different surfaces, really gives my tip of the cap to Novak Djokovic in terms of the GOAT conversation. And that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and follow our Instagram page too for more content with Spectator Sports.